play something, Maid. For fun. The laughter came like knives, sharp, glittering, and cruel. Amara's hand froze on the silver tray she carried. Around her, the marble dining hall of the Ward mansion shimmered under chandelier light, filled with wealthy guests in silk and arrogance. The piano, a glossy black Steinway grand, gleamed in the corner, untouched. Ethan Ward leaned back in his chair, glass of brandy dangling from his fingers, eyes locked on her. "Come on," he said, smirking. "Let's see what kind of talent my staff has. Surely you can manage Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star, right?" A few of his guests chuckled, their laughter sliding through the room like static. Amara's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the marble floor. Her dark skin, her modest maid's uniform, her bowed posture, all suddenly felt like spotlights of shame. She'd learned long ago how to blend into the background, to be unseen, unheard. But now all eyes were on her. I'm not sure that's—" she began softly. Ethan waved a hand, impatient. "Humor us." Something in his tone, that casual cruelty of a man who'd never been told no, made her heart tremble. She placed the tray down, the crystal glasses rattling faintly, and walked toward the piano. The guests whispered. One man leaned toward his wife. "This should be good." Amara sat down. The keys stared up at her. Old friends she'd left behind years ago. Her reflection shimmered faintly in their polished surface. Her fingers hovered, hesitant, trembling with more than fear. She could walk away. She could endure the laughter. But something inside, the quiet ache she'd buried since leaving Juilliard, stirred awake. Then she played, soft at first, tentative, like a secret shared only with the air. But as the melody took shape, a Chopin nocturne, delicate and sorrowful, the sound grew. It filled the cavernous room, floating past wine glasses and expensive perfume, past gold cufflinks and red silk gowns. The music bled warmth into marble. Every note carried memory. Her mother's laughter, the rain against her childhood window, the last night she'd touched a piano before poverty took it away. When she finished, there was no applause. Not yet. Only silence. Ethan's jaw was tight. His hand, which had once held arrogance, now trembled slightly on his glass. Around him, guests blinked as if waking from a dream. One woman pressed a hand to her chest. Another man whispered, "My God!" Then the applause came. Hesitant, then thunderous, Amara stood slowly, her face calm, her eyes unreadable. She gave a small bow, the kind of bow pianists give on great stages, and turned to leave. Ethan watched her go, his chest tight with something unfamiliar. Shame, maybe, or awe. But the night didn't end quietly. By morning, a video of the performance had gone viral, filmed secretly by one of his guests. The headline read, "Billionaire mocks Maid, gets humbled by her piano genius." Ethan's phone buzzed non-stop. Calls from the board, messages from PR, comments calling him a heartless rich boy, a monster. At noon, he stared out the tall windows of his study. The city spread beneath him. "How the hell did this happen?" he muttered. His assistant, Claire, cleared her throat. "You humiliated her in front of 50 people, sir. Then she played like Mozart reborn. It's not a good look." Ethan scowled. "She's a maid. How was I supposed to know she could—" He stopped. The words tasted sour. He turned back to the window. Outside, rain began to fall. Downstairs, Amara was cleaning the hallway, silent as always. But her eyes, once dim with quiet obedience, now held something new, a fragile, glowing defiance. That evening, Ethan passed her in the foyer. For the first time, he hesitated. "You," he said quietly. "Amara, right?" She turned, cautious. "Yes, sir." He studied her, her posture straight but humble, her brown eyes calm and unreadable. "You play beautifully," he said, the words stiff, awkward. "Thank you, sir." He cleared his throat. "You could have told me." Her gaze flickered up, steady. "You never asked." The silence that followed hung heavy, not of defiance, but of truth. Ethan felt it like a mirror he couldn't look away from. She gave a small nod and continued walking, her soft footsteps echoing down the marble corridor. For the first time in his life, Ethan Ward, billionaire, heir, untouchable, didn't feel in control. He felt small, and somewhere, faintly, he thought he could still hear the echo of her piano playing, not in his mansion, but in the hollow chambers of his own heart. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. It whispered against the tall glass windows of Ward Mansion, soft and relentless, a steady rhythm that seemed to follow Ethan wherever he went. He'd canceled his meetings, ignored his phone, and locked himself in his office. A cathedral of steel and silence. Yet even here, where logic usually ruled, that melody haunted him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, the shy maid with trembling hands, turning marble into music. Downstairs, the staff whispered too. The mansion buzzed with rumors, half fear, half awe. Some said Amara was quitting. Others claimed the billionaire had fired her to save face. But none of it was true. She still came in every morning at 6, folding linens, polishing floors, tending to rooms that weren't hers. And every night, after everyone was gone, she went to the small service room beside the laundry, where an old upright piano sat gathering dust. It was out of tune and missing 2 keys, but it was hers in a way, a secret refuge. She played softly, the notes spilling like tears she couldn't afford to shed. That's where Ethan found her one night. He'd come down quietly, restless, unable to sleep. He followed the faint sound of music, something gentle, familiar, and stopped at the doorway. Amara's back was to him, her head slightly bowed as her fingers danced over the keys. He didn't speak, didn't dare. The melody wasn't Chopin this time. It was her own, hesitant, aching, like someone piecing their soul back together, note by note. When she finally stopped, he said quietly, "What piece is that?" She startled, spinning around. Her breath caught. "Mr. Ward, I didn't realize. I'll stop." "No," he said quickly. "Don't." The word surprised them both. He stepped closer, the dim light washing over his face. Tired, unshaven, the kind of weary no amount of money could hide. "What were you playing?" She hesitated. "Something I wrote. A long time ago." Ethan blinked. "You compose?" A small shrug. "I used to, before—" She trailed off, her eyes lowering. He waited. "Before my mom got sick," she said softly. "I had a scholarship at Juilliard. But hospital bills don't pay themselves." She tried to smile, but it faltered halfway. "So I stopped playing. Started cleaning instead." For a moment, neither spoke. The rain outside seemed to fill the silence with its own sad applause. Ethan exhaled, slow and uneven. "You shouldn't be scrubbing floors, Amara." She looked up sharply. "Then who should?" "Someone has to. Life doesn't care how well you play piano." The truth in her words stung him. because he, of all people, should have known. His own mother had been a pianist once, too, before his father crushed her dreams beneath business deals and broken promises. He cleared his throat. You know, if you ever wanted to play again, properly, I could help. Fund lessons, a studio, anything. Amara blinked, caught between gratitude and suspicion. You don't have to do that, sir. I know. He paused. But I want to. Her expression softened, then cooled again. You're only saying that because people saw the video. Because it makes you look good. The accusation hit harder than he expected. I deserve that, he said quietly. But that's not why. Her gaze lingered on him, cautious, measuring. He looked different tonight, stripped of arrogance, his voice almost human. After a long silence, she said, You can't buy my forgiveness. I'm not trying to, he replied. Just trying not to be the man who humiliated someone with real talent. She turned back to the piano, pressing one key, a single, resonant note. Then start by listening. So he did. Night after night, Ethan found himself returning. He'd sit near the door while Amara played, never speaking, just listening. Something in the music stripped his armor piece by piece. The arrogance, the wealth, the inherited cruelty, all of it melted into the soft hum of her notes. But not everyone approved. At breakfast one morning, his assistant Claire frowned as she handed him a tablet. You've been trending again. He glanced down. A headline read, Billionaire's maid caught giving private piano lessons? The article speculated wildly. Gossip, scandal, mockery. Ethan's jaw tightened. This is garbage. Garbage people read, Claire said flatly. The board's concerned. They think you're distracted. He tossed the tablet aside. Let them think what they want. That evening, when he found Amara again, she was quiet. Too quiet. Her hands trembled slightly on the keys. They're talking about me, she said softly. About us. I know, he said. I can't lose another job, Mr. Ward. I can't afford to. He stepped closer, his voice low, urgent. You won't. I'll protect you. Her eyes lifted, full of hurt, pride, and something unspoken. You can't protect me from what people think. You can only protect me from yourself. The words hung between them like a verdict. For the first time, Ethan said nothing. He just stood there, drenched in the quiet truth that no money could erase. And as she left the room, the faint echo of her unfinished melody lingered, haunting, unresolved, like a story waiting for its reckoning. The next week, the mansion felt different, quieter, heavier, like every wall was listening. Amara worked in silence, moving through rooms like a shadow. The staff avoided her now, not out of malice but fear. Rumors had teeth, and no one wanted to be near the woman at the center of scandal, or the billionaire who'd made her one. But Ethan couldn't stay away. Every day he caught himself watching her, how she wiped the edges of the glass tables until they gleamed, how she tucked a loose curl behind her ear when she thought no one was looking. There was a grace to her silence that shamed him. One evening, as twilight poured in through the windows, Ethan entered the drawing room where the Steinway Grand stood. The same piano that had made him a fool before 50 witnesses. Amara was dusting the lid. Don't, he said softly. Not tonight. She looked up, startled. Sir? He gestured toward the bench. Play something, for me. No audience this time. No cameras, she hesitated. You sure that's wise? I stopped caring about wise. She frowned. unsure whether it was another order or a plea. But his eyes, softer now, stripped of that cold blue arrogance, said something she hadn't seen before: sincerity. Slowly, she sat. This time, she played something familiar. Debussy's Clair de Lune. The moonlight touched her face as if the world itself bent closer to listen. Ethan closed his eyes. The music sank into him like forgiveness. When it ended, he exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Why'd you stop playing, Amara?" he asked quietly. Her gaze stayed on the keys. "Because music doesn't pay hospital bills." "Your mother," he said softly. She nodded. "Cancer. I dropped out of Juilliard to take care of her. After she passed, I couldn't play anymore. It just hurt too much." Ethan looked down, guilt pooling in his chest. "I'm sorry," she gave a faint smile. "You didn't cause that pain, Mr. Ward. You just reminded me how it feels." He wanted to tell her he never meant to humiliate her, that he'd been raised in a world where kindness was weakness. But excuses felt cheap in the presence of her quiet strength. "Then let me make it right," he said instead. "You belong on a stage, not polishing mine." She shook her head. "You don't understand. When I play now, it's not for crowds. It's for her, and maybe for me." He took a step closer. "Then play for yourself, and let the world listen." Her voice hardened slightly. "Why does everything have to be a show with you, sir? Some of us play just to feel alive, not to prove we are." The words cut deep. For a moment, he saw himself through her eyes. A man who turned art into entertainment, feelings into transactions. He looked down, ashamed. "You're right." Silence. Then, unexpectedly, she said, "What about you? You ever play?" He gave a small, humorless laugh. "Once. My mother tried to teach me. I was terrible." "Maybe you never had the right teacher." The corner of his mouth lifted. "You volunteering?" Her eyes softened, and for the first time since that humiliating night, she smiled. Small, shy, but real. "If you can handle being the student." And so it began. Night after night, she taught him. Not in words, but in touch, showing him how to relax his wrists, how to feel the keys rather than press them. Her patience melted his arrogance note by note. At first, he stumbled, cursed, grew frustrated, but she didn't flinch. "Music doesn't bow to anger," she told him gently. "It bows to honesty." He learned to laugh at himself, to listen, to breathe. And she, slowly, learned to trust again. Until one night, as they played together, his hesitant chords beneath her graceful melody, the door burst open. "Sir!" Claire's voice cut through the harmony. She froze at the sight. The billionaire at the piano, the maid beside him, their hands almost touching. Her expression twisted with disbelief. "Do you have any idea what this looks like?" Amara rose quickly, stepping back. "It's not what you think." But Claire wasn't listening. "The press is outside, Ethan. They've got pictures of you two together. This," she gestured at them, disgusted, "is a disaster." Ethan's voice was calm but cold. "I don't care what it looks like." "Well, you should," Claire snapped. "Because by tomorrow, they'll paint her as some gold digger, and you as a man who lost his mind over a maid." Amara's face drained of color. "Gold digger?" she whispered. Claire sighed, softer now. "I'm sorry, but that's how they'll spin it." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Leave her out of this." "I can't," Claire said. "You already dragged her in." Then she turned and left, the door slamming like a gavel. Amara stood frozen, her hands trembling. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she said quietly. "Amara." "No," she whispered. "You don't understand. I've worked my whole life to be invisible, to survive quietly. And now the world's going to tear me apart for a headline." Tears welled, but she blinked them away. "I can't be your story, Mr. Ward. I won't." She stepped past him, her footsteps quick and final. And as the door closed behind her, Ethan sat alone at the piano, her melody unfinished, realizing that for all his power, he was utterly helpless against the music she left behind. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat at the piano long after Amara had gone, the soft hum of rain outside matching the emptiness in his chest. The same keys that had once mocked him now stood as his only link to her. Her scent still faint on the ivory, her presence still echoing through the notes she'd left unfinished. By morning, the world had already erupted. Headlines screamed across every news outlet. Billionaire's Maid becomes viral sensation. And his new obsession? Ward Industries CEO under fire amid scandalous relationship rumors. Paparazzi camped outside the mansion gates. Journalists hounded his board members, and Amara, whose name the tabloids now dragged through mud, didn't return to work. Ethan sat at his desk, staring at his phone. He'd called her 6 times. No answer. He typed a message, deleted it, tried again. Nothing sounded right. Every word felt like an apology too late. He slammed the phone down and buried his face in his hands. "Sir?" Claire's voice broke the silence. He looked up. She stood by the door, her expression softer than before. "She's gone," she said gently. "I called her landlord." "She moved out this morning." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Where?" "She didn't say." He pushed away from the desk and grabbed his coat. Ethan. But he was already out the door. He searched all afternoon. Harlem, Queens, the Bronx. Every place her old paperwork listed. Every small cafe and corner where a musician might vanish. Finally, near dusk, he found her. A small community center on the east side. The kind with peeling paint and a broken sign. Inside, through a cracked window, he saw her sitting at a battered upright piano, teaching a group of children. Their laughter filled the room. Her voice, patient, kind, guided their little hands across the keys. She looked happy. Free. He stood outside, unseen, as she corrected a boy's fingering. "Don't rush it, baby," she said, smiling. "Music isn't a race. It's a heartbeat." He swallowed hard, then stepped in. The door creaked, the children turned, and Amara froze. The laughter faded. "Mr. Ward," she said quietly. Her tone was formal now, distant. "Ethan," he corrected softly. "Please," the children glanced between them, sensing tension they couldn't name. Amara gave them a reassuring smile. "Why don't y'all take a break, okay?" They scampered off. Silence followed. "I had to see you," he said. "You shouldn't have come." "Amara." She crossed her arms. "You don't get to say my name like that." "Not after what happened." He took a step closer, but she moved back. "Do you have any idea what they've said about me?" she continued, her voice trembling but strong. "They called me a liar, a manipulator. They said I faked everything for fame. I can't even walk outside without someone shoving a camera in my face." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Sorry doesn't fix what you started, Ethan. You humiliated me once for your amusement, and now the whole world's doing it again." He looked down. guilt flooding through him. I didn't mean for this to happen. I couldn't let it end like that. I needed to tell you. What? She cut in. That you feel bad? That you want to help? I don't need saving, Mr. Ward. I needed respect. He flinched. Her words hit harder than any headline. I know, he said quietly. I deserve everything you're saying. But please, let me do something right. Let me clear your name. She shook her head. You can't clear what people want to believe. He stepped forward again, voice cracking. Then let me give you back what they took. The music. The chance to play. I can get you into any hall, any recording studio. She cut him off with a bitter laugh. And what? Stand on a stage they only gave me because the rich man who broke me decided I was worth hearing. He froze. Her eyes softened a little then. Not out of mercy, but pity. You still don't understand. Music isn't something you hand out like charity. It's something you live through. I don't need your name behind mine. I need my own. The words silenced him. For a long moment, they just stood there. Two people on opposite sides of forgiveness. Then, faintly, one of the children called from the corner. Miss Amara, can we finish the song? She smiled faintly. In a minute, baby. Her gaze returned to Ethan. You should go. He hesitated. Will I ever see you again? Amara looked at him. Really looked. And in her eyes was both gratitude and finality. Maybe when you learn to listen without trying to own what you hear. He nodded slowly. Then I'll start now. And he did, by leaving. He stepped out into the rain, closing the door softly behind him. Inside, the children began to play again, their uneven notes filling the night air. Ethan stood there, drenched and motionless, listening to the music. Imperfect, innocent, and full of life. The kind he'd spent years too proud to hear. For the first time, he understood what it meant to be humbled not by wealth or power, but by grace. And somewhere inside him, the sound of her piano burned like both punishment and prayer. The storm passed, but the world did not forget. For weeks, Ethan's face appeared on every gossip site. Business analysts speculated about his emotional instability. Social media mocked his silence. Investors whispered that he was losing focus. But Ethan didn't care. Something in him had shifted, quietly, irrevocably, since that night at the community center. He'd returned to his mansion, the one that once rang with arrogance and empty noise, and found it unbearable. Every corner reminded him of the person he'd been, the man who mocked a woman for sport, the man who thought dignity could be bought. Now, the grand piano sat uncovered in the drawing room. He played every night, alone, haltingly, clumsily, but sincerely. He didn't play to impress anyone. He played to understand what she meant when she said music was a heartbeat. And slowly, it began to sound like one. Meanwhile, in a quieter corner of Harlem, Amara found herself at peace, though not without struggle. Her small teaching program for underprivileged kids began to grow. Word spread quickly. The viral Maid pianist, who'd humbled a billionaire, was now teaching children for free. Parents started to call. A local paper did a feature story, one that finally painted her not as a scandal, but as a survivor. Still, at night, when the center emptied and the lights dimmed, she sometimes sat at the piano and let her fingers drift into that old, unfinished melody. The one she'd played the night Ethan walked in. It still carried traces of him, and of what they never said aloud. 2 months passed, then came the invitation, a letter embossed with gold. bearing the seal of the Manhattan Arts Council. Dear Ms. Johnson, we are honored to invite you to perform at this year's Winter Charity Gala. Your story and your gift have touched countless lives. We would be privileged if you would grace our stage. Amara's hands trembled as she read it. It wasn't pity this time. It wasn't a gimmick. It was genuine. But fear crept in, too. She hadn't played for an audience since that night. The night she'd been humiliated before applause redeemed her. Could she bear those eyes again? Those judging stares? Then she saw the handwritten note at the bottom. Your name was recommended by Ethan Ward. Her heart caught in her throat. On the night of the gala, the city glowed in crystal and frost. The grand ballroom shimmered beneath chandeliers, the air thick with perfume and champagne. Ethan stood by the entrance, immaculate in a black suit, but quieter than usual. The usual arrogance in his posture was gone, replaced by a stillness, like a man waiting not for admiration, but for redemption. He hadn't spoken to Amara since the community center. He'd only sent the recommendation. Anonymously, he thought. But clearly, she'd known. When she arrived, the crowd turned. She wore a long satin gown in deep emerald, her curls gathered at her nape, her posture regal. No one could mistake her for a maid now. She was an artist, and the room felt it. Their eyes met across the hall. She hesitated, then gave the faintest nod. He didn't approach her. Not yet. He couldn't. This was her night. When the MC announced her name, the room fell into hush. Amara walked to the piano with calm, deliberate grace, her heels clicking softly on marble. She sat, exhaled once, and began to play. The first notes were her own composition, the same piece she'd been perfecting for months. It began with sorrow, slow and searching, then bloomed into light. Every chord told a story. Of shame turned to strength, of humiliation turned to purpose. Ethan felt something inside him break. The room was spellbound. Some guests closed their eyes, others wept quietly. Even the cameras stopped clicking. When the final note faded, the silence that followed was sacred. Then applause erupted. Not polite, but thunderous. Amara rose, her eyes bright with unshed tears, and bowed. Her gaze flickered toward Ethan, who stood frozen, hands trembling. And then, before the crowd, he stepped forward. The applause softened to a murmur as he climbed the stage steps. People whispered, phones lifted, but Ethan didn't care. He reached her, eyes shining with something raw and unguarded. "Amara," he said, his voice low but clear. "I owe you an apology, not in private, not in silence, but here. In front of everyone who once laughed with me." The audience stilled. Cameras clicked. "I humiliated you," he continued, his voice trembling. "I made you feel small to make myself feel powerful. And I can't undo that. But I can tell the world what I learned. That grace can't be bought, and beauty can't be owned. It's given, freely, by people better than me." His throat tightened. "You made me see that. You made me feel again. Thank you." The crowd erupted. Not just applause this time, but something deeper. A wave of emotion that rippled through the room like sound itself. Amara stood still, tears streaking her cheeks. She didn't speak. She just looked at him and nodded once, slowly. Forgiveness. Quiet. Wordless. Complete. Ethan stepped back, his heart pounding, and for the first time in his life, He bowed, not to a board, not to investors, but to her. The audience rose to their feet. Amara turned back to the piano. She played again, softer now, like a benediction, and the music seemed to wash the room clean. And somewhere between her melody and his tears, both of them found peace. The night of the gala changed everything. By morning, the headlines were no longer cruel. They called it "The Apology Heard Around the World." Clips of Ethan's public confession flooded the internet, not as scandal, but as story. The billionaire who bowed to his maid, the man who found his humanity through music. And at the center of it all was Amara. Her name trended again. But this time, for all the right reasons. Amara Johnson, the pianist who played her pain into power. Critics praised her composition. Music producers called. Donations poured in for her community program. The same people who once mocked her now celebrated her. Yet through all the noise, she stayed grounded. Each morning, she still walked the same path to the community center, still greeted her students with the same warm, steady smile. Her life had changed, yes, but not her soul. One afternoon, after the children had gone home, she found an envelope on the piano. No address, no signature, just her name in neat handwriting. Inside was a letter. Amara, I didn't want to disturb your peace, but there are things I still need to say. Things I couldn't tell you that night. You once told me that music isn't something to own. It's something to live through. I finally understand what that means. When you played at the gala, I didn't just hear you. I saw everything I'd been blind to. Your strength, your pain, the way you turned humiliation into art. You showed me what grace looks like, and I will never forget it. Ward Industries is launching a foundation, the Amara Johnson Music Initiative. It will fund lessons, instruments, and scholarships for children who can't afford them. It's in your name, but it's not mine. It's yours, always. Thank you for saving a man who didn't deserve it. Ethan. Her hand trembled as she read. For a long time, she just sat there, the letter pressed against her heart. Outside, the sun dipped low, spilling gold light through the cracked windows. It washed over her hands, the same hands that once scrubbed floors, now shaping futures. That night, she walked home through the quiet streets of Harlem, her coat pulled tight against the chill. In shop windows, TVs played clips of her performance. People smiled at her in passing. A little girl waved shyly and said, "You're the piano lady." Amara laughed softly. "I guess I am." Across town, Ethan sat alone in his office. The rain had started again, soft, rhythmic, forgiving. On his desk sat a framed photo. His mother at her piano, smiling. For the first time in years, he looked at it without bitterness. He walked to his own grand piano, the one that once felt like a symbol of pride, and sat. The bench creaked softly. He opened the lid and placed his fingers on the keys. At first, he hesitated. Then, slowly, he began to play. Not Chopin, not Debussy, but the same melody Amara once wrote. The one she'd played that night in the service room when he first truly saw her. He played clumsily, softly, but with heart. Each note was a confession, each mistake a reminder of how far he'd come. Claire stepped in quietly, watching him. "You're getting better," she said. He smiled faintly. "I had a good teacher." She nodded, a rare warmth in her eyes. "You know, she changed you." "Yeah," he said, looking at the piano. "She did." He paused, then looked up at Claire. "Send a check to the community center. Quietly. No press. Just help her keep it running." Claire's expression softened. "Consider it done." Weeks passed. The foundation took shape. Amara's name appeared on posters and music schools across the city. Children who had never touched an instrument before now sat at pianos, violins, and cellos, their laughter echoing through halls named in her honor. But Amara didn't bask in fame. Instead, she retreated into her craft. She composed in silence, writing pieces that captured both her sorrow and her joy. Each one began the same way, with a simple, trembling note, and ended in light. Late one evening, as she sat alone at the community piano, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. She opened it. A video played. Ethan, at his mansion, playing her piece, slowly, imperfectly, but sincerely. Below it, just 3 words, "Still listening, always." Amara smiled. A soft, trembling smile that carried forgiveness, pride, and peace. She turned back to the piano, her fingers finding the keys again. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. She closed her eyes and began to play. The notes rose, bright, free, alive. The spring air was thick with sunlight and the faint scent of lilac. The Harlem Community Center, once dim and echoing with emptiness, now shimmered with life. Banners hung over the entrance. The Amara Johnson Music Initiative, grand opening. Inside, children tuned violins, mothers whispered with pride, and laughter spilled like melody. Amara stood near the stage in a pale blue dress, simple, elegant, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. The nerves she felt weren't fear anymore. They were awe. A young girl tugged on her sleeve. "Miss Amara, will you play today?" Amara smiled gently. "Yes, sweetheart. I think I will." As the audience took their seats, local reporters, city officials, families, and students, Amara looked out across the room. A year ago, she was scrubbing this same floor. Now, she was about to dedicate it to music. The MC, a kind-faced woman from the Arts Board, took the stage. "Today, we honor a story that began with humiliation and ended with hope. A woman who reminded us that true talent, true grace, cannot be silenced by wealth or rank. Please welcome Miss Amara Johnson." Applause thundered. Amara stepped forward slowly, her heels clicking softly on the wood. She sat at the piano, the same model as the one from the Ward mansion, though this one gleamed brighter, newer. She inhaled deeply, and then she began. Her piece was new, a composition written for the opening. It began with quiet notes, tentative as dawn. Then, gradually, it bloomed into warmth, layering harmonies like sunlight breaking through rain. Every measure told her story, the shame, the discovery, the forgiveness. When the last note faded, silence stretched through the hall, the kind of silence that only true beauty can summon. Then came the applause. Standing, roaring, endless, Amara rose and bowed, her eyes glistening. "Thank you," she said softly into the microphone, "for believing that music can come from anywhere, even from someone who once cleaned these floors." Laughter rippled through the crowd, gentle and affectionate. She continued, voice trembling just slightly. "I was taught that every person has a song inside them. Sometimes life makes you forget the tune, but when someone listens, really listens, you find it again. She paused, then smiled. And for that, I am grateful. The applause returned, longer this time. Somewhere in the middle of the crowd, unnoticed until now, a man stood quietly at the back, tall, in a gray suit, face half hidden by the light from the windows. Ethan Ward. He didn't approach. He didn't want to steal the moment, but his eyes never left her. When the event ended and the crowd began to disperse, Amara turned, as though sensing him, and their eyes met across the room. For a heartbeat, the noise faded away. She walked toward him, calm, composed. "I thought you weren't coming," she said. "I almost didn't," he replied quietly. "Didn't want to turn it into a story about me." She smiled faintly. "It never was. But thank you for what you did. For the foundation," he shook his head. "You did that?" "I just signed some papers." Her gaze softened. "You changed, Ethan." He gave a small, sad smile. "You made sure I had to." For a long moment, they just stood there. No tension, no anger, just quiet understanding between two people who had walked through fire and come out clean. "I'm heading to Los Angeles next week," Amara said. "A music school invited me to teach. Just for a semester." He nodded slowly. "They're lucky. And you?" she asked. "Still running your empire?" He chuckled under his breath. "Trying to run it differently. Less empire, more humanity." A soft silence followed. Then he stepped closer, offering his hand. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you." Amara looked at his hand, then took it. Firm, warm, steady. "And for what it's worth," she said softly, "I forgive you." He blinked. "I didn't ask for—" "I know," she said, smiling. "That's what makes it real." They both laughed quietly, the heaviness between them dissolving like dust in sunlight. Ethan looked around at the children running through the hall, the parents smiling, the music echoing. "You built something beautiful here." She turned toward the piano. "No," she said. "We built it by listening." He nodded, eyes glistening faintly. "Goodbye, Amara. Goodbye, Ethan." He walked away, the crowd swallowing him up until only the faintest glimpse of his gray suit remained. Amara stood alone for a moment, breathing in the sound of her students' laughter, the thrum of piano keys, the joy pulsing in the air. Then she turned back to the stage. A little boy was struggling with a simple melody on the keys. She knelt beside him, guiding his fingers gently. "Don't press so hard," she whispered. "Music isn't something you force. It's something you let happen." He tried again. The note came out soft, pure. She smiled. "There you go. Perfect." Outside, the afternoon sunlight streamed through the tall windows, lighting her face in gold. The piano glowed beneath her hands. Somewhere far away, in a glass tower overlooking the city, Ethan sat at his own piano, playing that same melody. Slow, imperfect but true. Two souls, two pianos, one song, echoing across a city that had once kept them worlds apart. And in that harmony, fragile, human, redemptive, both found peace.